Special meeting of the Springfield City Council. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll at this time?
Counselor Edwards,
Present.
present. Counselor Letterman,
Present.
present. Counselor Gomez,
Present.
present. Counselor Allen,
Present.
present. Counselor Kern,
Present.
present. Counselor Whitfield,
Present.
present. Counselor Ramos,
Present.
present. Counselor Brown,
Present.
present. Counselor Walsh, absent. Counselor Davila, absent. Counselor Fenton,
Present.
present. Counselor Hurst,
Present.
present. Counselor Williams.
Present. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, can you please call the first item before us?
The first item is a transfer from fiscal year 21 certified free cash to fiscal year 22 estimated revenues in the amount of $2,500,000.
All right, councilors, of course, these items are the items continued from yesterday. TJ, if you'd like, I can pass it to you at this time. If you would just please state your name and address for the record.
TJ Plant Capo, 42 Garfield Street here in Springfield. The request yesterday was to go back to the mayor and ask for an additional $2.5 million for this year and $2.5 million for next year. That request was denied, and he is standing firm on the $2.5 million this year and the $2.5 million next year, total for $5 million. I believe he sent out a press release in response to the article in Mass Live today.
Thank you, TJ. Are there any questions or comments from the council at this time? Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Did you ask if he would be here?
I did not ask if he'd be here. I said I'd be there to let him be known. I believe the schedule. I don't know what he asked for a schedule. I didn't ask him.
No, I thought that we did request that if possible, he be present.
Well, he's a busy guy and I don't control his schedule. So
But you said you didn't ask.
yeah, because it's not my role to ask him to be here in the sense of, he knows you asked your request was to be here. That was in the article that was published. So he knew the request and he chose not to be here because he's never been to a tax rate meeting before, and I don't think he's going to stop that precedent now. He comes to the budget meetings because it's his budget being presented to the city council, being voted on to become the final adopted budget. The tax rate is a city council function that he makes a recommendation, which he did a week or so ago.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just because he's never done it before doesn't mean one can't change, because we have this problem every year. So maybe it should be time for him to be here and answer the questions himself firsthand, why he won't budge, why he won't do better for the residents in the city of Springfield. So that's not on you, TJ, and I don't even need a response on it. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Councilor Walsh?
Yes, I'm a little late to the meeting. I did eventually, I was on the wrong line. So,
Madam Clerk, can you please, I'm sorry, Councilor Walsh. Madam Clerk, can you please recognize Councilor Walsh?
Counselor Walsh.
thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the finance team that's here. Now, when we left the meeting last night, there had been some discussions about the city council wanting to do more for the citizens of Springfield. As we stated, we think there's a much greater need this year than before. And I want to know what happened to that chain of thought, that request. Was it ever discussed?
I discussed it at length a few times last night and this morning, and the answer is the fiscal responsible approach is to commit to the $2.5 million this year and $2.5 million next year, and he was not willing to increase the amount, and we're standing on our financial health as the reason why we make these difficult decisions, and there are other resources out there that are available to deal with hardship that homeowners and businesses may be facing, rental assistance, mortgage assistance, utility assistance. I did send a memo out to all the city councilors talking about the major topics that came up yesterday, so if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, please take a look at it. It talks about the CIP shift, what a max shift would do. It talks about us and our tax bills compared to similar communities and surrounding communities. It talks about fiscal responsibility. It talks about the hardship relief programs that exist out there. So that's something that I know I wanted to be put in writing for everyone to know where the administration and where I personally, as the capital of the city, stand on the issue.
I read it. And I was hoping that it would include some of the discussion that we had yesterday about the position of many of the city councilors wanting to do more. I really think it's quite unfair to paint the city council as fiscally irresponsible because they want to do more to help the citizens and the business owners at a time of unprecedented crisis, hardship. How do we know if we had just gone up to 3 million instead of 2.5, that still wouldn't have taken care of all our financial responsibilities? And it's unfortunately it's fallen on you, TJ, but this is a conversation, as was said yesterday, this is a conversation that should have happened before you got to this point where you wouldn't move, beyond a certain point, that there was no wiggle room, because I still don't think it's enough for the taxpayers and the stabilization fund. Where does all that money come from?
Stabilization fund comes from a variety of controlling expenditures and having revenue come in ahead of benchmarks.
Yeah, so I mean, so we're giving the taxpayers back some of their own money. I don't think it's irresponsible to want to do more.
So DOR would not think what we're doing is a good practice or a best practice, but it is something that is done for cities and towns. Fiscally, the best thing to do is to not do any, and the mayor wasn't comfortable with that because that's the most fiscal responsible thing to do. Having said that, the reality is putting $2.5 million was this year and committing to doing it again next year to avoid the spikes in the tax rate and the extra higher or potentially higher increases next year as a way to level it off and still adhere to our fiscal policies.
Well, I think we all have the same goal here. We just have a different end. And I'm sure even the DOR has to recognize that these are tough times for people.
Exist, and there are programs that exist right now through the CARES money, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and then we have American Rescue Plan dollars that target exactly what the hardships are, whether it's housing assistance, if it's senior assistance, nonprofit assistance, small business assistance, new business assistance. We have all these programs, utility assistance. I mean, we have all programs that can address the need beyond doing further reduction in the tax rate by using free cash.
Yeah, and we certainly want people to know about these. So I think that you're going to have quite a campaign to let people know about it. And I'm sure there's people out there who don't have any access to the internet. I mean, people don't always know about these plans. I think it'd be interesting to see how many people actually take advantage. But that's down the road. No, I for one am disappointed there isn't more of a compromise.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. Councilor Gomez, followed by Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last night, TJ, you told us on my question that this process started back in August. That's correct?
Well, we adopted the budget effective for July 1st. So the conversations we were having about the budget were in May and June. the board using the timeframe from the adoption of the budget till essentially November to look at values, and we use that time to make sure our values are where we need them to be. And then the mayor sat down around Halloween to start having the conversation with his team on what the recommendation should be. And that's what he released just over a week ago now. And then we've had 3 hearings through the finance special tax rate committee, whatever the formal name is, I don't have, but on it, where we've discussed the strategy at length.
TJ, if I can just interrupt, and Councilor Gomez, Madam Clerk, can you please recognize Councilor Davila, please?
Counselor Davila?
Present.
Thank you. Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Whitfield, was your committee contacted to enter into this conversations about what was to happen?
We were contacted about a week or two, well, probably like a week before we had the tax rate meetings. It was a little rushed. It wasn't like we got a month's notice or that we were invited to any of the tax rate setting conversations or any meetings ahead of time. Although Patrick did say, you know, if I have any questions that I could definitely be in touch with him. But by that time, you know, holidays are coming. We got a lot going on. I wish that we were contacted a lot earlier.
So your committee had very little to say about what was to happen. That's correct?
Well, I'm saying the same thing that I said in the tax rate setting meetings, Councilor Gomez. We had this conversation. I prefer not to reduce. I prefer to keep the factors the same. If we could come to a compromise of adding more of the free cash to reduce the tax bill itself, but some way the tax bill for the residents are going to be reduced. And unfortunately, because of the lack of compromise, it's probably going to fall that I propose that the tax factor changes.
So then can I say that we have very little to do with what is happening right now
Very little.
in their request. And again, I go back to what I said last night. We, as the city council, is put against the wall in a hard rock here because we either swallow it or swallow it, because we have no choice whatsoever in the mandate that the mayor has sent us, with us having no input before it's happening and being caught up right now that we will have to approve his request in the benefit of doing our duties and trying to help as much as we can our residents of this city and our business. In reality, we can do nothing about it. Take it or leave it. That's where I have the problem, that we should be involved in this negotiations before the mayor makes his decision in 2 days to be sent to us, and here it is. Do it or do it. And I got a problem with that when we have no leeway to defend our request or at least put up a fight. Right now, we can even put up a fight in behalf of our residents because we have no leeway. And again, I say I'm not going to be in the city council next year, but you, my colleagues that are going to be there, we have to find a way that before this happens next year, we are involved and that we are giving up our opinions on what is to happen. We should not be caught like this again, ever. Ever. The mayor should not set this trap to us, because this is a trap that is set for us to fall in without having no solution to it. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gomez. Councilor Whitfield.
I want to, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say, finally, that changing the tax rate factor for the residents and the businesses is not the goal here. The goal was to at least come to some type of compromise to increase the amount to reduce the tax bills for our residents. The programs are not for all seniors. There's not for all people. I'm very familiar with Wayfinder programs because I work closely with them. I refer a lot of people there. I help people with their applications. My daughter works in the courthouse that help fill out applications for those going homeless. But in a situation, and I'm gonna go personal again with my parents, their mortgage isn't behind. The senior programs don't benefit them, you know, so all the programs that are being offered isn't for everybody that might be struggling. Like, you have to be behind on your mortgage. I'm not going to encourage my parents, well, to go behind on anything in order to get some services that they need when we have the ability to offer them ourselves. We, in the memo that the mayor put out, we're in the best financial place that we've been ever, and especially in the last 10 years when he got the administration after the Financial Control Board. We're in the best position ever. We have 27 million. Our revenue is coming in above, it's trending above what we budgeted. So I don't understand how and why we are so fiscally responsible. And with all the considerations, there is MGM money sitting in the bucket that hasn't been touched and is well over $2.5 million. There are other resources that could have been used to do this, but I think it's just like a tug of war that a lot of times the administration try to put on the council. But right now, right here, we've been trying to do nothing but compromise. We haven't been trying to pay tug of war, but we want to do more for the residents that vote us in, the residents that's going to come to us when their tax bills increase. And when you're nice and cozy in your offices, we're going to be fielding those calls. So I wanted to say that. And I'm also going to say, I want the full budget at budget time. I don't want pages. I want the full budget so we can check out the revenue. We can truly check out the expenditures. And we can ask that the property tax that kind of like, when we put the property tax, it's kind of like filling the gap of the revenue that we need to increase, that we need to make. And so we're going to look at that more closely during budget time. So please give us the full budget, not the pages, so we can go through it thoroughly like we have in the past. Because that is really the time that we have to make the difference, council. We have to see how much revenue they're asking us to raise to fill that budget gap or to balance it. So I know for sure I'm going to be looking at that more closely, because when we get here, there's no compromise from the administration, obviously.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Hurst, followed by Councilor Davila.
Thank you, Mr. President. TJ, what happens to the 2.5 million if we don't approve it today?
It stays in unappropriated certified free cash, and we don't have money available to reduce the tax rate to the mayor's recommended, or the penny sheet that has been sent to the council would need to be updated.
So what happens with that money? Again, can you you said it stays in unappropriated funds until when?
Yeah, essentially stays in our fund balance until we ask the city council to move it to stabilization reserve or do some other.
Okay. So it's going to go back into our reserves if we don't approve it tonight, ultimately. Is that accurate?
Ultimately, it'll stay there until we determine what to do with it.
And so I guess my thought process is, if we don't have to, if we vote this down tonight, I mean, we'll simply just be voting it down until the mayor comes back with a better proposal, and we'll just use the reserve funds. I mean, is it possible to use the reserve funds at a later date to reduce folks' tax bill?
No, once the tax rate is set, there is nothing we can do. However, I caution the council. Treasurer Caputo reached out to Kelly and Ryan, who does our bill processing and mailing, and their deadline, I believe, was December.
They need a rate approved by the state no later than December 10th. Historically, it takes the state anywhere between 3 and 4 days from when the council approves it to approve it on their end.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate that timeline. Not sure that it applies to us, considering that we're just getting this now. certainly won't be on us if we don't approve it tonight.
Well, no, what I'm saying is if we don't get a tax rate out a tax bill out by January 1st, the full amount of any taxes will be raised by one, instead of doing it over two bills, it'll be on one bill.
So I guess my question to you is, are you saying that we cannot use money from the reserves to offset the amount that we're going to offset folks' tax bills after this meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
The mayor needs to sponsor a financial order to the city council.
And so he could feasibly do that after this meeting, right? I mean, if he wanted to reduce it, he could do it after this meeting. And in fact, he could come back with 3 million or 3.5 million and say, we want to take this out of reserves. And let's say we'll apply it to the third or fourth quarter and reduce folks' bills significantly. He could do that, right?
Tax rate already be set.
No, once the tax rate is set and a factor is chosen, it's set until next year, basically.
Okay, so you're saying there's no way for him to provide relief across the board to taxpayers? I mean, he could merely send it.
After a tax rate is set, no.
So he won't give him a discount. He can't give him a discount on taxes, but he could certainly give him a discount on something else, right?
Potentially, yeah.
And the equivalent amount. So I guess a couple things, and I'm going to be done for the evening. But I think number one, to Gomocindo's point, Councilor Gomez, I agree. We should have been involved in the negotiations a lot longer. The response that we received today was definitely a take it or leave it response. And, the onus didn't have to be on us. And I still don't think it's on us. I would argue that this is not a dictatorship. I mean, there are checks and balances in democracy, and we're here to provide those. And we ought to be put in a position where we can provide those. Contrary to Councilor Gomez, I think we can do something. And I'm personally not going to vote in favor of the 2.5 million, and because I want more. I think the citizens deserve more. And I think we as a body will show the citizens and the residents that they deserve more by simply voting this down, knowing that at some point in time in the near future, and it may not be the tax bill, but if the mayor wants to provide relief, he can do so. And so my hope is that, if folks decide to vote it down, that the mayor will come back and come up with something that is negotiated between the council and himself that is more palatable to the residents and benefits the residents to a greater degree than what he's put forward now. And so with that being said, I am not going to support this, and let the chips fall where they may. And I'll argue to the residents that your tax bills were going up anyway, and they're still going to go up anyway. And we want more as a city council, which is why we voted down. And the mayor still has an opportunity to do more, and we expect him to do more. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Hurst. Councilor Davila.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to let you know, I may be having activity issues. But before I ask my question, Mr. President, if I may, two quick information. I believe with item 1 or 2, are they going to be taken separately, or are we taking them as a package?
Separately, Councilor.
Okay. Mr. President, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe this wise body did ask for the mayor to be present today. I don't see him present today. Is that correct? Is that a no, Mr. President?
Yes, you're correct. He's not present.
Thank you. I do have to say, Mr. President, that I'm slightly disappointed the mayor's not here. I was hoping to talk to him directly. I admire the job that the team is doing. It was very succinctly pointed out to me, the professional team. But if I may say politically speaking, Mr. President, I see this as a one-finger wave to this wise body council. So just to express disappointment here. TJ, I have a question for you. I see that with we're doing a 2.5 split. Yesterday I was processing this, and I still not clear why are we committing to 2.5 for fiscal year 2023.
So council, the answer to the question was to have a level of consistency in the tax rate, and the tax is that. So if we put 2.5 million or 5 million or whatever the number could be only in 1 year, the jump would be much higher next year when we set the tax rate. So instead of being, so if it drops from 216 to 200, well, next year might be going up 300. And so the idea was to commit 2.5 this year and have that commitment again next year for 2.5 million, so we can have consistency.
Well, the reason I asked TJ is because I thought about this very closely last night, as I say, processing this, and it's kind of like putting us again between a rock and a hard place even before we get to the table, because we could do better potentially in 2023. I just cannot believe we don't do better than we were doing right now, although I have to say it's a very good effort. I think we can do better. So, Mr. President, I think that, and by the way, if we don't approve the 2.5 million today for fiscal year 22, we are going to be blamed for it, and the residents are going to miss some sort of tax relief, albeit not what we like to see. So the proper time, Mr. President, if at all possible, I might be introducing a motion to table item number 2 to further discussion, because why rush it now? Why approve 2023 now? Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Councilor Davila, and that will be reserved, if you'd like, for the second item, agenda item. Councilor Ramos.
Mr. President, thank you. I have a couple of questions before I give my comments. Can somebody give me some numbers? What is the difference between the average tax bill as proposed compared to the average tax bill with a $2.5 million investment from free cash? How much of a difference is that?
Well, the penny rate sheet that has gone out assumes the $2.5 million. So the mayor's recommendation, the tax rate, the average tax bill would go up $216.
And if it was not for the $2.5 million, how much would the average tax bill be?
So if you're using the same like commercial rate, it would be about $278 of an increase.
So with the $2.5 million, it would change the average tax bill from 278 to 216.
That's right.
Okay, and how much would it change with an additional $2.5 million?
It's about $25 per $1 million of free cash. So it would go down another $62.
And that's the yearly bill or the quarterly bill?
That would be the year, so paid over 2 quarters, the third quarter and the fourth quarter.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
That's for the whole year, but that increase is seen on the third and the fourth quarter tax bills.
Okay. So for the whole year. Okay. So yeah, now we have the numbers, right? We're talking about a $216 increase. Potentially, the city council is with the additional $2.5 million. We're talking maybe $150 something increase, $160 increase, as opposed to $216. That puts things into perspective. Mr. President, I'm going to support the motion this evening. I'm going to support the request as proposed for $2.5 million for fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. I do believe that it is, it isn't like we're not obligated to add anything to provide any sort of relief. This is something that the team has put together, and I appreciate all of their hard work. in putting this together and proposing, some relief to the taxpayers. In a city like Springfield with so many needs that we have, it's just never recommended to leave any potential revenue on the table, right? And so I understand the process. I get it. I know that this is what we need to do in order to keep our city running smoothly and provide the services that we provide. And I understand that, we are going to have other needs, right? Those $2.5 million can go towards some other place where it will have a larger impact. So I'm going to support the motion tonight. I would caution my colleagues in voting against it because, without the $2.5 million, we're looking, as we heard, at a $278 increase as opposed to $216 increase. I would also caution against voting or tabling the 2023 transfer because again we don't want to see a jump from one year to the next that is going to be unmanageable for a lot of people. So I do believe that this is a good request, and I'm going to be supporting it this evening. Excuse me. However, Mr. President, I do find the mayor's approach and lack of communication in this effort to be disrespectful to the council. We had the chairperson of the finance committee requested his presence at requested even a private meeting to discuss this topic, which all of the requests were ignored. It's not a way to do business. The residents of the city of Springfield want to see government working together and at the very least working cordially, right? And so we do have to have that mutual respect that if a member of this body requests some communication with the mayor of the city of Springfield, that we should be afforded that request. It doesn't surprise me, however, because this is the way that things have been done in the past. The mayor has frequently thrown the city council under the bus, and he will not hesitate to throw us under the bus when it comes to a tax increase. Unfortunately, I worry that the headlines tomorrow are going to be that the city council voted to increase the property tax bill, because even though we're setting the tax rate at a lower rate, people are going to see an increase in their property tax bill. And that's something that, again, because this is a city council function, as was mentioned earlier, people are going to be pointing the finger at the city council. So I think it's convenient that the mayor takes credit for his $2.5 million in recommendation to decrease its property tax bill. But, when the tax or the property tax rate, but when the tax bill goes up, he and everyone else is going to be pointing the finger at the city council saying, you did this. I think the message should be that we tried our very best to decrease people's property taxes in the city of Springfield, that we tried our very best to work cordially and together with the mayor, and that the mayor declined our invitation to work together to decrease it any further. Again, Mr. President, I think that it's not a good way of doing business. I think there should be more communication and there should be more respect between the two branches of government. But again, Mr. President, I will be voting because it is in the best interest of our residents and my constituents to vote in favor of this tonight. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Ramos. Before we proceed, can I just have our colleagues in City Hall to please just go around the table, introduce yourselves, just stating your name and address for the record, so I won't have to do it. Please.
Patrick Greenhalgh, Chair of the Board of Assessors.
Chris Caputo, Collector Treasurer.
Melanie Jacoby, Budget Director, 417 Plumpy Road. And Lindsay Hackett, Deputy CAFA. Jessica Guerra, Board of Assessors.
Matthew Fontaine, Board of Assessors.
Thank you. And I will also, yes, please continue.
Patrick Burns, Comptroller. Ed Pakula, City Solicitor. I live on Beaumont Street.
Thank you all. All right, Councilor Woodfill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilor Ramos for his words. Definitely wish that there could be more level of maturity when it comes to handling government affairs and put any personal feelings aside and handle what we have to handle for the community. That's the appropriate way to run government. And I wish that that is something that could be done with this administration, but unfortunately that has not been the case in my case anyway. And I'm only speaking for me here. So I do agree with you on the 2.5 million for this year. I don't want our residents to suffer even further by not accepting the 2.5 million. I wish there was some type of compromise that the administration would have came back with, even if it was 3.5 million, but there was nothing at all because that's just how it's been. And if we continue to let it happen, that's how it will be. And so one thing that I don't care what the headline says, there are many, many people watching this meeting tonight as there were last night. I got a lot of phone calls and a lot of thanks for fighting for us. And so that's what we'll continue to do. No matter what the headline says, we know what's happening. Everything's recorded. And I'm just really, really disappointed. As far as next year, I will not be voting for that because we don't know the financial situation that we'll be in. We could be in better financial situation where we can add more than 2.5 million because we have the free cash, because we're not putting 12 million of free cash. I will never vote for that, to put 12 million of free cash for income that we're not losing into the reserves account, because we want to maybe increase the percentage that we have in there from 6 point something to 8. I will never do that when we have so many families here struggling. And while some of you don't see the struggle, I do personally on a daily basis. I'm getting calls like this. That people need relief and they need help and they don't know where to go. And just like Councilor Walsh mentioned, people don't all have access to online. They don't know how to fill out ARPA forms. They don't even know how to get to the information. I get a lot of calls like that. And then I had a disturbing response that send me an email and I might get back to you in 2 or 3 days from someone in the administration. That's not good enough. I want to talk. I want to have a conversation so we can do better together for our residents. So while I'm going to support the 2.5, I'm not sure on the tax rate yet. And I'm sorry, Nancy, this is not a dig at the businesses. You know, I support the business community as much as possible. But right now I have so many struggling residents that even if I can give an additional $8 decrease to those residents, I'm going to try my best to do it, whether it pass or not. You know, I would love to keep the tax factor the way it is. So I just do want you to know that, Nancy, and I do thank you for the hard work, and we're definitely going to miss you at the Springfield Chamber, and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do as the president of the Springfield Chamber of Commerce. So I'm not going to support next year's transfer. I will support this year's transfer because any benefit is better than no benefit. Although, as I've said in the last press releases, it is not enough. And I'm going to continue to say that. And I know we can do better. And I know there's other resources out there. And we are being fiscally responsible because I worked in finance. I know how it works. We could do better.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Gomez, if you don't mind, I want to get to Councilor Letterman and Councilor Walsh, who haven't had an opportunity to speak yet, and then I'll circle back with you. That's okay. Councilor Letterman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I had a couple of questions before we head towards this vote and the preceding votes. Relative to some internal policies that I think are going to be important given everything that we've discussed tonight. So the first is the same conversation we had last year, and I mentioned it again yesterday, as did other councilors. Are we able to put an insert into the third quarter tax bill that will detail the relief that is available? Is that possible this year?
Councilors, it's my understanding that the deadline to put together an insert would have been October 1st to be included in the mailing. However, we could talk about other options to notify the public.
Sure. So with that said, yeah, thank you. So I'm disappointed to hear that. We talked about doing it last year. We weren't able to do it last year. It was, it was mentioned earlier in the year. It sounds like, the boat was missed on that. So I think we need to make that a policy next year. So I'll say that again, as I said last year, since we will not be able to put an insert in, I would like to see internal policy developed, a written policy that does two things. Number one, provides the necessary information to anyone in the collector's office or the assessor's office that's dealing with the public to make sure they are trained on the referrals that need to be made. And then secondly, that again, a written policy is established that as a part of any type of notices that go out or communication that happens and the result that people are not making the payments on time, that information is included there. Can we have a commitment that will develop that sort of internal policy in the coming year?
I have no issue with that.
Okay, that's helpful for me. The other point I wanted to make about the two proposals for 2.5 million in relief, which I'll be supporting this evening because I do think it's important to provide the relief that we can, and I'm not comfortable necessarily jeopardizing that because it is a significant $62 difference. But I wanted to speak to the transfer that's proposed for the following fiscal year, and the reason why I think I definitely understand where some folks are coming from on perhaps wanting to wait on that. The reason I'm going to support that, and I would encourage people to think about this, is the effect of putting the money on top of the levy to decrease it is that will still be there next year, and it will be there the following year. And so there's a guaranteed increase the following year as a result of putting the 2.5 million on top this year. And as I said last night, I think it's really important that we make a plan for how that will be borne by residents and by businesses. And I think the first step is the commitment of the additional 2.5 million to sort of prevent the drastic increase next year. So that I understand where folks are coming from. I don't think that putting the 2.5 aside now prevents us next year if there was additional funds proposed, whether it's through free cash or through one of the other ideas that's been proposed, which I appreciate from the council. But that's my reasoning for thinking that we should at the very least commit this additional 2.5 as a plan is developed for future fiscal years. So those are my thoughts on those two items. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman. Councilor Walsh, followed by Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate the thoughtful comments of my fellow councilors. And I do have to say that I believe Councilor Ramos hit the nail on the head. I mean, we all want the same thing here. None of us want to jeopardize any relief or savings for our constituents. And what we're all trying to do is the best thing for the citizens of Springfield. But, you know, it is really almost ironic and disappointed that we can't be happy that we're offering relief to our taxpayers because of the situation that Councilor Gomez described, that we find ourselves in, that when this came to us, there was, you know, no room for compromise. And, you know, I will be supporting it, but I will be disappointed that a reasonable, and I don't see anything unreasonable about saying, hey, can we do a little better? Why that couldn't be a starting point for some other suggestions. But none of us want to jeopardize our citizens. But, you know, I feel that our city council, the members that I serve with, I think we've been very reasonable with requests that have come to us that we haven't always liked, but we supported because we thought it was in the best interest of the city. So it should be more of a two-way street.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. Councilor Gomez.
Again, I feel like I'm being bullied in this situation. We all are being bullied in this situation with our hands tied. And in my heart and in my mind and in my years, I'm not going to support this because I will not be comfortable with it when I leave this council, knowing that this mayor is bullying us all and putting us in a corner where we can defend ourselves, regardless how much comments and how much suggestions. I just hope that next year we look at this, you city councilors look at this, that we become part of this negotiation, is not wait again to be bullied. So I am not going to support this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Gomez. Are there any other questions or comments from the council at this time? Again, are there any other questions or comments at this time? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the order.
Motion to approve the order.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Edwards and seconded by Counselor Letterman. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll in just, I'm sorry, a couple seconds. Counselor Davila is rejoining us. All right, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Gomez?
No.
No, Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Curran?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Ramos?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Brown?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Davila?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Fenton?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Hurst?
No.
No, Counselor Williams?
Yes, the order is approved. Madam Clerk, and perhaps TJ, just a point of clarification. Do we need to suspend Rule 19 on this item?
Excuse me, Mr. President, what was the question? How many votes needed?
No, I know, no, I believe you mentioned 7 votes are needed, but my question was suspension of Rule 19 for this item due to where it is going or landing in the account. Is it a transfer that needs suspension of Rule 19?
No, we do not need suspension of Rule 19.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item, please?
The next item is a transfer for fiscal year 21 certified free cash to fiscal year 23 estimated revenues in the amount of $2,500,000.
All right, thank you. Counselor Davila?
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion that we send this item to COVID Finance Committee.
There is a motion to send
Second.
the item to committee, and it's been properly seconded by Counselor Whitfield. Madam Clerk, if there's no discussion on the motion, can you please, Counselor Fenton?
Can you just reiterate what item this was, Mr. President? That was very quick.
Sorry, Counselor Fenton,
Can you read the agenda item again, which item it is?
Item number 2.
I know, but what is the matter?
Madam Clerk, can you please read that?
Sure, it's a transfer of fiscal year 21 certified free cash to fiscal year 23 estimated revenues in the amount of $2,500,000.
Thank you.
Counselor Ramos on the motion.
Mr. President, on the motion, I'm going to be voting against the motion to committee. I would suggest that rather than send this motion to committee, we approve it tonight and continue negotiations. There isn't anything stopping us from adding an additional funds anytime at any point during the year between now and the next time that we set the tax rate for fiscal year 2023. So I would suggest that we accept the $2.5 million for fiscal year 2023 and continue to push for an additional funds between now and the next time that we set the rate.
Thank you, Counselor Ramos. Counselor Letterman, followed by Counselor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the finance team. If this wasn't passed tonight, there's no effect for the upcoming 3rd and 4th quarter bills. We would just have to revisit this right before the tax rate next year. Is that accurate?
Correct. This was just to set aside to ensure that the money was available next fiscal year for fiscal 23. It has no material impact for anything setting the tax rate tonight.
So if we didn't set it aside tonight, what would you do with it? You'd have to ask us to transfer it to stabilization reserve?
That, or we'd transfer it at a later date if necessary. So yeah, I would like to put it in reserves, just as a place to safeguard it, but.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just express the same concern I expressed previously, which is I think by putting $2.5 million on this year, we've essentially guaranteed a $62 increase next year. We've delayed a $62 increase to next year. And I think given what we know about the pension liability, what we know about healthcare, what we know about the rising costs of really all goods that the city is moving, the city is required to commit towards, is that we'll probably be in a significantly similar situation next year. And so I actually think it is appropriate to, at the very least, commit these now to make sure that we don't see an even larger increase next year, and prepare a strategy relative to some of what we've been discussing. So I'll oppose a move to committee because I think we need to make that commitment now.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman, Councilor Hurst, and I would just ask members of the public to please refrain from commenting where you stand on issues in the chat box, please. Councilor Hurst.
Yeah, I guess the problem that I have is that there will be no negotiations. And we're going to be in the same take it or leave it mentality, take it or leave it moment that we are right now. And so I agree with my colleague. I think, if there's a good faith effort by the administration to have a conversation, let's talk about it all while it's all in committee.
Councilor Hurst, Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just going to echo what Councilor Hurst. So far, we haven't been able to negotiate. So we commit to this now. Who's to say we'll be able to negotiate later? Is that possible, TJ? Is that something you can answer, or we need to try to talk to the mayor and may not succeed?
So my commitment to the council is to make sure that I have the dialogue with the mayor about this 2.5, and then if there's any other money added for next fiscal year's tax rate, that we have that conversation.
Thank you, TJ. You keep your word. You at least go back to the drawing board, as far as I know, anyway. But I don't trust him. I don't trust him. So you can say that all you want, and then he'll still do this. We can't negotiate with a person who makes a decision that doesn't show up. But during budget season, we're gonna really scrutinize it to make sure that we don't have to raise all these revenues via property tax and then be in this situation next year. So one way or the other, we're gonna scrutinize something. We're gonna decrease what we can to make sure we're not in this situation that we have to raise so much property tax that we burden the community so much when we know that there are revenue sources to help decrease the tax bill right now. So we want to play hardball, then hardball is what it is, because this is not the way to work together to get things done. And so I do support this item going to committee so we can negotiate it and come back to the table, maybe with a stronger proposal or with some other resources to help our taxpayers next third and fourth quarter, because this isn't it. This is not how you run a government. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Gomez.
Yes, thank you, Council President. The way I see this is an ambush. This is an ambush. We approved this today. We have no say so come next fiscal year. We need to send this to committee and let the committee work with it and be able to negotiate a little bit higher for next year. Once we say 2.5, okay, for 23, we are locking ourselves in. So let's send it to committee and let the committee work on it and then bring us a decision on what. That way we can be part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gomez. Councilor Davila, you didn't have another, you just had the motion. That's been.
I just want to make a quick comment regarding the motion itself, if I may, Mr. President, just to be brief. Mr. President, I kept my word. I said that I was going to vote for item number 1, $2.5 million, and I did. Reluctantly, but I did. Why am I sending this to committee now? Although I agree, and some of my colleagues make some very eloquent points, I think that we can do better. We have to do better. just locking ourselves now for a potential $62 decrease in the future, that's not good enough for me. Particularly when we're sitting in bonanza right now of ARPA money, and the administration themselves have said that we have the best collection revenues that we have in a long time. We can do better. And besides, from a negotiating point of view standpoint, like just Councilor Gomez just said just now, if we lock ourselves in now, forget it, we're done, we're toast, kaput for 2023. Because they're gonna come back and say to us something, there's gonna be something, or we have to do something. It's not gonna happen. The only way that if we want to do better for the residents of Springfield and provide a better tax relief is to send this committee, and then we can talk to the mayor. Again, the mayor's not here today, and we ask him to talk to him. That's, for me, that's not a good sign for 2023. And again, TJ, the financial team, you guys are excellent, but this is not over. This is with the mayor that we have to talk to. And so that's my reasoning for sending this to committee. And I know the administration, if they were in our shoes, they will be doing the same thing, putting it off. So we can do better. We need to really negotiate, and if we lock ourselves in, the only ones that are going to be losing, it's not going to be us, the city council, it's not going to be the mayor, it's going to be the residents of the city of Springfield for a better deal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Davila. Folks, there's been a motion on the floor that's made by Councilor Davila that's been properly seconded by Councilor Whitfield. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on sending this to committee?
On sending the item to committee, Councilor Edwards?
No.
No. Councilor Letterman?
No.
No. Councilor Gomez?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen?
No.
No. Councilor Curran?
No.
No. Councilor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos?
No.
No. Councilor Brown?
No.
No. Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Davila?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton?
No.
No. Councilor Hurst?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Williams?
No, the noes have it. Is there any further discussion on the item? Councilor Fenton.
Just wanted to say for the record, I intend to vote against it because I don't think it's a money to be committing to reduce a tax rate a year from now. We got pension problems and relatively low tax bills comparatively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton. Are there any other comments or questions on the item? Seeing none, I will now entertain a motion to approve the order.
So move.
Motion made
Second.
by Councilor Brown and seconded by Councilor Allen. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll to approve the order?
On approving the order, Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Curran?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Whitfield?
No.
No. Councilor Ramos? Yes. Councilor Brown?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Davila?
No.
No. Councilor Fenton?
No.
No. Councilor Hurst?
No.
No. Councilor Williams?
Yes, the order is approved. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
The next item on the agenda is the tax factor for fiscal year 22.
Great. Is there anyone present to speak to this? Please state your name and address for the record, or TJ, I can just hand it to you.
Patrick Greenhall, Board of Assessors, 235 State Street. I'm here on behalf of for the tax factor vote. And what you should have all received is the sort of the options table. And this presents the options that are available to you, the City Council. This is one of your obligations, is the tax factor vote. And if you have that in front of you, what you're seeing would be Anything highlighted in yellow are last year's sort of tax information. The big orange line, that's the mayor's recommendation. And that tax factor is 0.7927. I would just remind the city council that that's actually what we're voting on tonight is the tax factor, not the individual tax rates. And that would result in, as we've discussed, an average tax increase of $216.
All right, thank you. Do councilors have any questions or comments? Councilor Allen, followed by Councilor Wood.
Thanks, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't muted. I haven't spoken yet tonight. I intend to speak on this item. And that is that I looked at TJ's memo today. I mean, a couple things I've considered besides the great ideas and comments that have been made in the first hour of this meeting by many different people. The other thing that has weighing on me is the comments by Nancy Creed yesterday about the impacts on the businesses, the negative impacts on business because of COVID. And I've also considered things we haven't talked about in this meeting to this point. I don't believe we have, which is the things in TJ's memo, which came out around 4:30 today. And I just want to point out a couple things that I think are facts that need to be considered. We would all love to do as much as we can for residents. Who wouldn't want to do that? We all want to do that. But we also have a job of running the system and running the city in a fiscally responsible way. So I just want to point out a couple things. One is the CIP shift. If you looked at the memo, if you had a chance to read it, the CIP shift was the first item that TJ pointed out. And that is that the state has a maximum level of a ratio that counts the maximum level of balance between the residential tax rate and the corporate tax rate. And we are getting closer to that. The more you favor the residents in this tax rate, you run potentially precariously close to the point where we are at the maximum of where the residential tax rate here is at its maximum point of favoring residents and the minimum point of balancing that with corporate and, with the CIP rate. So I just think everybody needs to be aware of that. That was a new one on me yesterday. It concerns me. And, when I think of what we're talking about here, the residential factor and doing as much as we can for the residents. One thing I want to point out is that last year, we reduced the residential rate 63 cents. Now we're talking about doing it, 20 cents or whatever this year. It was reduced 63 cents last year, and the corporate rate was not reduced at all. It was kept at the same rate. So the residential rate got the full as much reduction as it could get last year. I know that we're all concerned about residents and tax bills and stuff. We're all, all of a tax bill go up too, and everybody's going to have to face it somehow. And I know many people, it's a struggle for many people, but we did give a 63-cent reduction last year. And the mayor's rate this year offers a good reduction on both sides. So the first item in TJ's memo was that. The second item was average tax bills. And if you saw that there's graphs on the second page, if you have the access to look, bringing it up on your computer, in Springfield, looking at our neighbor towns to Springfield, and the ones that are most like us are Chicopee and Holyoke. I would say they're the most like us. And our rate would be 32.67 here. This is for fiscal year 21. The Chicopee tax bill is $34.90, which is $27 more than Springfield. And Holyoke's tax bill is $4,005, which is about $700 more than ours. So I think the point is that our total tax bill is still low, even when you compare it to communities that are like ours. And the next graph is against the gateway cities, which are around the Commonwealth, but are cities that are more like us: Brockton, Lowell, Worcester, Fitchburg, Holyoke. We already talked about Holyoke, Pittsfield, New Bedford, Fall River, Lawrence, and Springfield. And everybody in that crew has at least a 200 or roughly, it looks like $190 tax rate, tax bill bigger than ours. And that's Lawrence. That's 190 more than us. And then soon as you look across, it's a couple hundred more and a couple hundred more. And then Holyoke is 4,000, and Lowell is 4,400, Brockton 4,500, et cetera. So I think there's good information here that while we're trying to do everything we can, this is, and maybe some people would argue that we're not doing everything we can, but I think to be fair, facts should be considered here. And there's nobody here who doesn't want to give as much relief to the residents as possible. But when you look at what residents are paying in these other communities, it's more than they're paying in Springfield. And it's more than they'll pay if we adopt what the mayor has recommended. The third thing I want to point out is the fiscal responsibility. TJ wrote this memo. I thought the third paragraph, or the third section with 2 paragraphs in it, is really worth thinking about. 3 of us came on the council in January 2010. Catering was already on the council. So the 4 of us were here immediately after the Finance Control Board left a week earlier. They left at the end of 2009, and they were here to help the city deal with its financial crisis. Since they left, I was in one meeting with one of them on his way out the door. And since they left, there was a lot of concern about would Springfield now, without the oversight of the Financial Control Board, would we be able to manage our own money? Would we be able to run things without people looking over us? And I just have to say that in the 12 years since that happened, that I don't know that we've had a fiscal crisis of any type. We've certainly had fiscal challenges. We've cut budgets. We've had to find money for this, that, or the other. I'm not sure we've had layoffs or anything. I think we've had a pretty great run financially with the recommendations and the overall management of the system of the fiscal the fiscal issues of the city being run by the team that's here tonight. TJ and Pat Burns were here then. They're still here. And there's some other people, some of the people in that room and that table are new people. But TJ and Pat Burns have been very consistently part of this whole thing. And we have not needed any more intervention. We have not needed another financial control board. I think the recommendations of that team have, while I don't agree with all of them, have consistently overall, I don't agree with all of anything anybody does, and none of us do. But overall, when you look at the result, and I think of all the construction we've done in that time, the beautiful new schools, the senior center, the library, the parks, all these different things, I think we've done pretty well. And the recommendations, the way we've run this system, the city's finance has been based on the trust and the decision-making and the responsible way of managing the city's finances that we've seen from this financial team. So I'm not here to praise them so much as to say that our track record for 12 years has been pretty good with these guys running it. And could we do better for residents or whatever? Of course, we can always try to. But when you look at what people in the other cities are paying, et cetera, we're the lowest. We're the lowest. And the only, when you look at cities that are like us. So the last section of his memo is about the hardship thing, the programs that are available for hardship. And I know what Tracy said. She's got more knowledge on this stuff than I do. And, some of this doesn't apply as much as we'd like it to apply and stuff. But at least it's a start, and it's a recognition and a consciousness raising that we need to be better about this and making sure people know what's available to them. So because of, what I've heard, and there were, this is my 4th meeting on this. There were 2 finance meetings on this. I actually missed the first one, but I made the second one. It was a hard meeting. It was a week ago right at this time. And then the 2 last night and tonight. Because of everything I've heard and from Nancy Creed's report the other day, I would like to make a motion to accept the mayor's recommendation, and that is a residential tax factor of 0.7927.
Counselor Allen has made a motion that's been properly seconded by Counselor Edwards. Is there any discussion on the motion? Counselor Whitfield, did you want to comment?
I mean, my hand was up prior to him making the motion, so I wanted to comment on the overall tax factor, but I guess it'll all tie in. So is it seconded?
Yes.
Okay,
Counselor
so
Edwards.
I'll comment on the motion. But first I want to comment on the facts that Counselor Allen brought up. So I started working in the finance department in 2010. And while I was there, layoffs happened. I want to put this out there. It has not been a perfect finance team, for the simple fact that Lee Erdman made a great suggestion because he's seen property values decreasing. He got terminated and it wasn't followed. And that was a mistake. Also, there was layoffs. Also, we took furloughs. But if you wasn't working there, if you've never been in a situation where you have to take a furlough, that may not mean anything to you. It might seem like it's been a perfect finance team, but it wasn't. It wasn't perfect. Because for me and other employees, we took furloughs to prevent from losing our job during a recession. We took those and people did get laid off. There were hard cuts during the past 10 years that folks may not know about. So it wasn't a perfect situation. In addition, if we want to compare apples to apples, let's put all the facts on the table when it comes to different communities. We don't know the senior rate. We don't know the low income rate. We don't know a lot of different factors to compare apples to apples. So we're comparing apples to maybe red apples to green apples or oranges. If you just want to stick to one or two facts, let's bring them all in. So I'm not going to agree that the memo was written very nicely and it supports everything the mayor's been saying and it supports everything that the finance team has been saying, but it hasn't been a perfect 10 years. It hasn't. I lived it. I was there. So I don't want to put the misnomers out there that they've done a fantastic job. We've done a fantastic job because I was part of it back then, but we did the best that we could with what we had. Right now, we are not doing the best that we can with what we have. We are in the best financial position that I've known since working there in 2010. Yes, I agree with that 100%. And that is why we can do more. And so when we had a tax factor committee, we proposed a different amount. I don't know if I could talk about that right now while there is a motion on the table, but we did propose, because any decrease to me for the residents is a decrease nonetheless. And so while they got it 63% last year, they deserved it. And they deserve it again this year. Like, it's not, oh, just because they got 63% decrease last year, they don't deserve it this year. They don't deserve more. How did the other communities do during the pandemic? Did they have the losses that the city of Springfield had? Are people struggling like the city of Springfield had? So we want to bring in facts. Let's bring them all in. We can't just bring in the facts that benefit us at the time. Let's bring them all in. And so we propose a different tax factor that I don't necessarily agree with what we agreed on. It was tax factor 7915 because, no, I'm sorry, 7906, because that's only a 3-cent decrease. So, but I do want to go one up and counter propose 7910, which would give a decrease to the residents of 12 cents and a decrease to the businesses of 6 cents. And it'll knock another additional $8 off of the tax bill. That may not seem like much to someone, but unless you're hungry and you need an additional $8, that means something. That means something. You can go to a farmer's market with an additional $8 and buy some things for your family and whoever. When you're a senior, additional $8 means something if you're already on a fixed income, which the additional money to the bill is going to take a portion of that. That all means something. So next time a memo is presented, bring in all the facts. Let's do income, seniors, let's do housing, let's do pandemic numbers. Let's bring them all in and let's tell the truth that the last 10 years, 12 years hasn't been perfect, because it hasn't. And I lived through the imperfection of what happened on the finance team. I lived it. So I'm not here speaking from someone who watched it.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Fenton on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I take exception to the classification that some of us watched it. We lived it. We took pay cuts too. We participated in those furloughs. Thank you. Additionally, as the former chair of the Finance Committee, we held many meetings publicly as a council to institute a tiered furlough program at the time to benefit and reduce the economic impact that was realized by many of the city employees that had to participate in that program. That was a council initiative, and I'm proud to say that Councilor Allen and I both participated in the pay cut program and did not participate in the tiered furlough program, which the two of us advocated for very loudly and proudly. So that's my personal experience. I won't begrudge any other council for speaking to theirs. I will begrudge them for trying to classify mine. With that said, I also take exception to the classification that if you feel differently about a rate setting process or about the amount of money that we should be taking from our reserves and contributing to a reduction in the tax rate, that somehow you must be manipulating the data or only providing the facts that are relevant to you. To the extent that that is directed at me or others who agree with me on this subject, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's professional. I don't think it's fair. The fact that I've raised is that we have one of the lowest average single family tax bills in the Commonwealth. To me, that's the most important fact. Are there other contributing factors? Of course. I weigh them and consider them. And to the extent that someone feels that there's relevant data to present that counteracts that to suggest that we have something other than one of the lowest average single family home bills in the Commonwealth, I urge them to present it. But I wanted to point out, Mr. President, that those of us who were on the council at the time, we did take a pay cut. We lived it. We did not just watch it. We experienced it, and we advocated on behalf of the city that we are duly elected to represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton. Councilor Davila on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand there's a motion on the floor, Mr. President, but before I speak to the actual factor, if I may, speaking of data, because it's been brought up a couple of times, the memo that TJ sent out today, very good memo. I am concerned with the CPI shifting closer to 1.75 because we do also have an obligation towards our business community because they do have to create jobs and we have to help them create those conditions. I get that. So that is a concern of mine. However, I don't feel I will be doing my job as a counselor for Forest Park if I don't bring this point. This data that was provided to us, it says here that, as Councilor Fenton has eloquently stated, Springfield has the lowest tax rate at $3,267. This is for fiscal year 2021. And if I may just read out some, like for example, Long Meadow, they have a average bill of $9,388, Wilbraham $6,880, Northampton $5,803. Then it goes on to Worcester $4,372. It goes on into many, many other communities. It is true, we have the lowest tax bill. But I don't feel that we're comparing fully apples to apples here. I think we're comparing apples to oranges. Because you know what these communities, Long Meadow, Wilbraham is Long Meadow, Northampton, Ludlow, Agawam, West Springfield, Haverhill, they all have in common that the average median income is higher than ours. We know that out east, the price market for the housing market is higher. So of course the tax bills are going to be higher. So I bring that up because I feel like I need to point that out, that I don't really feel it's like comparing apples to oranges, although I think the good intent behind this. Councilor, I believe Councilor Allen just made a motion to accept the major recommendations of 0.7927. My apologies, my glasses are not working. I believe the committee recommended 0.7906. I believe was a recommendation from the tax committee. If either one of those fails, I will suggest, if appropriate at the time, that we meet somewhere in the middle. 0.7915. And that will be smack in the middle of between the mayor's recommendation and the tax committee recommendations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Davila. Councilor Whitfield, did you have another comment on this?
Yes, I do.
Sure.
I wanted to comment on my opinions. Just like everybody's entitled to theirs, I'm entitled to mine. And I can bring up, if I want to, whether anyone thinks is unprofessional or not doesn't bother me, because them feeling targeted is personal and internal for them. I'm not targeting anybody, but I'm bringing in my own perspective. I don't know who lived it, but I know I did. And so that's the perspective I'm bringing in. And the only reason that I said that is because it was said that I don't think that there was any layoffs. And I think everything was done great. And my point was it hadn't been. And I don't know who set the tier, nor did I care, because at the time, my family was suffering, but we still made it through. So I bring up what's relevant for me in a professional way, and whether you see it as unprofessional or not doesn't bother me, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to do for my constituents, and I'm going to continue to, and I'm going to continue to say what I want, when I want to, and how I feel it's appropriate to do so. So I just wanted to make those points. And when I said that all the facts weren't brought in, I thank Councilor Davila for bringing in that our income is much lower than those other communities, that our values are much lower than those communities. That's important information when you want to bring up how great of a job is being done. That's important information. Our tax bill is lower, but so is our income. So it's relative. And so let's bring in all of the information. Outside of that, I'm going to continue to do what I feel is best for the constituents that I speak to, that voted me in. Whether folks get offended on how I say what I say is personal and internal, and I suggest that they deal with it the best way that they can.
Councilor Whitfield, Councilor Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Certainly respect Councilor Whitfield's right to express herself and express how she feels. And in terms of the comparing apples to apples, I appreciate that acknowledgement, and I acknowledge and concede that it's not always comparing apples to apples in these different communities. I do want to highlight, though, that in addition to the other examples that were provided, we are also substantially lower than other communities, which may be more comparable to an apple, given that analogy, like Holyoke and Lawrence and Lowell and Chicopee. And with that said, I just would thank Councilor Whitfield for her advocacy and for her professional response, and respect her right to speak and be heard on this subject. I just want to be clear, the part of it that I took exception to was the statement suggesting that some of us here were watching. I couldn't help but take that comment personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton. There was a motion on the floor made by Councilor Allen, seconded by Councilor Edwards. If there is no discussion, further discussion on the motion, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll to accept the recommended tax proposed by Councilor Allen?
On accepting the tax factor, Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Letterman.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Curran.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Whitfield.
No.
No, Councilor Ramos.
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, I'm unclear on which tax factor we're voting on.
We're voting on the fiscal year 22 tax factor, which is item number 3.
Is this the
Yeah, it's the recommended.
the mayor's recommendation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Brown.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Walsh, you're muted.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Davila.
No.
No, Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Hurst.
No.
No, Councilor Williams.
Yes, the tax factor is approved. Councilors, I just received a word from both TJ that they had misspoken on the fact that both of the financial orders actually do need suspension of Rule 19. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to suspend Rule 19 for items 1 and 2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Coleman and seconded by Councilor Allen. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on items 1 and 2?
On suspension of Rule 19 for items 1 and 2, Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Gomez?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Kern?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Whitfield?
No.
No, Counselor Ramos?
Councilor Ramos? Councilor Ramos? Feel free to mark him absent, please.
Or absent, Counselor Brown?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Davila?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Fenton?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Hurst?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Williams?
Yes, thank you, councilors. Councilor Fenton?
Mr. President, I believe because Counselor Whitfield voted no, the matter fails. If one person objects to
I
waiving.
changed
Rule
it to a
19.
yes. I don't, it's a yes.
Marking Counselor Whitfield as a yes.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton, for the point of clarification, and thank you, Councilor Whitfield, for being amendable to that. Madam Clerk, is there any further business before the council this evening? Councilor Letterman?
Mr. President, I recognize we've come to the end of the agenda. I just wanted to say, because the Shiva will be prior to our next meeting, that I received word last night that Dr. Marty Nathan of Brightwood Health Clinic passed away. I know many here worked with Dr. Nathan, both through her work with the clinic as well as her advocacy in Springfield around many issues. And I'm understanding there will be some services later on this week. So as soon as I have some more info, I will send that out through our staff, but just wanted folks to be aware of that. And I know many people worked with her. She'll be greatly missed.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman, and she will be missed indeed. Knew her personally myself, and she was certainly a fighter for the community. Councilor Whitfield, followed by Councilor Walsh.
I just wanted to say that it is Counselor Hurst's birthday, and we sung for Counselor Williams. And we need to sing for Counselor Hurst.
Ready?
I'm sorry about the passing, but I'm happy that you've seen another birthday. So if we can on 3, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Counselor Williams. Happy birthday to you. Many more.
You know, if yours sounded any better, Council President Williams, because I was doing the singing, but this one here, leaves a lot to be desired. No, just kidding. Appreciate the well wishes. Thank you all.
Someday one of the birthday videos of ours is going to go viral. I know it.
Councilor Hurst, happy birthday. And Sagittarius is definitely the best sign of the zodiac, I will say. Councilor Walsh, feel free.
Yes, Councilor Hurst, you'll be happy to know that the finance team was singing to you. But I think many of us that are on this call tonight did not get to go to the retirement celebration for Janice Santos, who we know has done so much in the community with Head Start. So I want to do a shout out for Janice Santos, and that we appreciate all that she has done in her many years as a pioneer in Head Start.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Councilor Walsh. She should be recognized certainly for her efforts. She's a lovely lady. All right, Madam Clerk, is there any further business before the council this evening?
No, there is not.
All right, councilors. Well, I wish you a blessed evening, and we will connect next week.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Hello?